A couple of new Predator films were announced the other month, but one in particular, currently titled Badlands, is the one I think we need to be paying the most attention to, and for one very particular reason. Prey director Dan Trachtenberg is returning to helm the project, which is reported to take place in the future and has recently added Elle Fanning to its cast. Those three details are all we have to go off so far, along with Prey 2 also being in the early stages of development, but I want to spend some time delving into why Badlands specifically feels like such a big deal, and why it's so great to see the Predator franchise flourishing after floundering for so long in the 2010s. Hey everyone, Ewan for What Culture here, and it's time to take a deeper look at Badlands and why, even though it's still early in development, it's already become one of my most anticipated upcoming releases. Okay, so first off, Badlands was initially confirmed by the Hollywood Trades back in February of this year, with reports also revealing that Trachtenberg and writing partner Patrick Asen had returned to helm the project, which is expected to start shooting in July after having been in pre-production already for several months. This is also where we learn that the film would have a future setting and, like Prey, a female lead. Now, for me at least, there's already plenty in that to get excited about. The first and most obvious being the return of Trachtenberg and Asen. Prey was the first entry in the franchise since Stephen Hopkins' Predator 2 to really deliver the goods, even outshining that film to come closer than any of its peers to matching John McTiernan's original, which, and I know I say this in every single video for What Culture, is the greatest action movie of all time. Prey doesn't hit the same majestic Arnold Schwarzenegger punctuated levels as the original, but it was a great and hugely refreshing action film, and one that definitely deserved to have a theatrical release instead of being shunted onto Hulu and Disney+. But I digress. Prey ended up being a huge success on streaming, and hopefully, with any sense, that'll mean Badlands and its sequel get to make it to the big screen too, especially given that Alien Romulus was once considered for the same route, and is now firmly one of the most anticipated theatrical releases of 2024. Make it happen, Disney. Please don't hurt me again. But yeah, Badlands. Apart from the obvious great thing being that Trachtenberg and Asen are back, or should I say, Trachtenberg, the coolest thing about this to me is the setting. Now, granted, future is broad. Predator 2 itself had a neo-LA setting of 1997, but for Predator fans familiar with the comics and general expanded franchise canon, that concept immediately conjures all sorts of iconic imagery. And that's because, for many of the years where there weren't any Predator films, the comics and games were there to pick up and carry the baton. In fact, you can thank the Predator comics for creating Aliens vs. Predator and inspiring the setting and look of Predator 2, which also gave us our first on-screen tease of a confrontation between the Outjer and Xenomorphs, as well as that ending snippet that would eventually result in Prey. Plus those great AVP games. None of that would exist without the comics. And given Prey felt so spiritually in tune with the Dark Horse books from the 90s, it makes sense as a sort of full circle moment for the series to enter the most iconic setting from those halcyon days. The kind of future we saw depicted in the AVP comics, as well as more recently the Marvel books that have been published since 2022. Again, we don't know when exactly Badlands will be set, but talk of a future setting to me immediately conjures ideas of monoliths, cyberpunk cityscapes, and recently colonized worlds in the vein of the AVP comics Ryushi. It could be something more like a near-future reality, but going a little more ambitious than taking cues from the shared imagery of Alien or from something like Blade Runner, that sort of heaving industrial kind of dystopia, and putting a Predator in there has to be a surefire recipe for success. Also, one that would honor one of the most quietly influential comic book series of the last 3 decades, which would be a neat bonus in itself. Now, granted, this is just me taking one word from a trade article and taking it as far as it can go, but that in itself kind of speaks to the boundless applications of the Predator in the action and horror genres. If you can't get excited about the idea of a Predator in the future movie, then you can probably still get hyped about the idea of putting the Predator in different settings and time periods and letting them use to just tear things up. The idea of putting the Predator in feudal Japan already gained huge fan traction online in the wake of Prey's release, building off that Yakuza-style confrontation we saw in Predators. How about a Predator film set in the Pacific or Asian theater of war in World War II, where you have a Hell in the Pacific style premise where an Allied and Japanese soldier have their units wiped out by the Predator, and then they have to work together against the elements like crocodiles, poisonous critters, and so on, as well as the big intergalactic trophy hunter that's trying to rip out their spines. Hey, maybe even go further back than that and try something with a medieval motif, or a Wild West one. Have a heist movie? Well, why not throw a Predator in there? That perfectly acceptable pirate film you got going on? Oh, you get a Predator in that, and you got yourself a stew going. The Predator is like the Swiss Army knife movie antagonist in that you can throw one in any genre and it'll work. Yes, even a rom-com. Anyone but you two. Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney are off on another romantic holiday together until the Predator comes along and they have to use the power of love to take him down. I'm still workshopping that last one, but by and large, what I'm getting at with all of this is that Badlands as a concept is great, but it also holds a lot of potential for franchise expansion that the comics have been running away with intermittently for the last 30 or so years. Put aside for a second that I'm sounding increasingly like the TV exec in the Poochie episode of The Simpsons, but what I'm talking about here is a pretty outrageous paradigm. Prey was the first movie in the franchise to take the gauntlet from Predator 2 and really run with it as far as premise and execution are concerned. And as someone who can't get enough of this guy's big toothy smile, I couldn't be happier that all this is actually happening. In fact, go down in the comments below and pitch me your dream Predator movie right now, because I want to know. And on the topic of dream Predator projects, maybe from this we'll get an actually good Aliens vs Predator movie? I know there's probably franchise purists who don't want that to happen again, but if you can find some guys who can light a scene properly, and maybe if the movie takes inspiration from the widely acclaimed and long-running comic book series, then hey, that seems like a worthwhile idea to me. They could even bring back Machiko Noguchi, the original protagonist of the comic series who eventually joined the Predators. That might be a 90s fever dream too far, but when the Predator sequels up until recently have felt so penned in, it could be a good thing to go wide and expansive, so long as Trachtenberg and whichever filmmakers end up joining him for the ride actually want to go down that route. The big issue with both Predators and the Predator is that while both had interesting enough concepts, they both devoted themselves way too heavily to the original. The former in its cast of characters and recycling moments from its hidden film in a Star Wars-y fashion, and the latter in its attempts at genre subversion, which eventually gave way to contrived cinematic universe scheming, as has been typical for most studios since the MCU exploded over a decade ago. Prey, and for that matter Predator 2 as well, had the foresight not to do that, carving ahead with their own unique settings, characters, and action set pieces. Something I hope and believe will continue with Badlands. But Disney, make sure this one goes on the big screen this time, please? And that was my big stream of consciousy thoughts on the recently announced Predator film starring Elle Fanning. Very clearly excited about this one, maybe prematurely so, but I want to know what all of you are thinking about it down in the comments. Did you enjoy Prey, and is a future set Predator movie the right call? Oh, and don't forget to write your own dream Predator pitches down in the comments below, as I'll make sure to highlight some of my favorites in the next video. Don't forget to do a like if you enjoyed it or just feeling generous. And yeah, that's all for now though. I've been Ewan, this was What Culture, and now it's time for me to get to the chopper. See ya.